Some skills are learned quickly, others are built over years. You can't rush proportions, you can't shortcut material control, and you can't fake the kind of understanding that only comes from tying thousands of flies one after another. Today's guest has tied at shows all over the West, from Albany to East Idaho to Bellevue, where he'll sit down and tie 50 flies a day, give most of them away, and spend as much time as he can teaching proportions, thread control, and everything you need to tie flies. This is the Traveled podcast series where we bring you to the best places to travel to and fish in the West, and the stories of how the region became what it is today. Dave Allison is here, and he's going to be talking about the East Idaho Fly Fishing Expo that's coming up here. We're going to find out what he's going to be tying there, including some of the Wally Wing patterns. We're going to talk about Quigley's Film Critic and the Hackle Stacker, some of his influences there. We're going to find out why he modified the Hackle Stacker and how he made it unique. We're going to talk about the difference between tying and fishing different flies. He focuses on dry flies, so we're definitely going to get into that conversation today. We're going to find out about Kelly Gallup's found link pattern and why this has become a confidence pattern for Dave. Lots of good stuff, including some of his influences, going back to Daving McVale, the Norvise and Norlander. This is going to be a good one. I want to let you know that this episode is presented by Visit Idaho and Yellowstone Teton Territory, home to some of the most diverse and wild trout waters in the West. All right, let's get going. Here we go. Dave Allison. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good, Dave. How you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I'm glad we were finally able to put this together. It's been many years. It feels like I think the first time I saw you was at the Albany Fly Tying Expo, like many years ago, and we chatted. I think I did a little video or something, but we talked about the podcast, and now you're getting ready to, I think, head out to the East Idaho Fly Tying Expo and all that. But yeah, it's been a little while, right? Do you remember that first year when we connected?
Yeah, that was before COVID in Albany, and yeah, I think there were like 200 fly tyers there, and you came over. I think you did a video. And actually, that is the next show, is the Albany show. That comes before East Idaho.
Oh,
so.
It does. That's right.
Well, I hope I'm right about that.
That's right. Yeah, the Albany show. Yeah, you got that. And then the East Idaho is, I think it's kind of the third week of weekend in March.
Right,
like
right.
Yeah.
East Idaho, and then the Salt Lake, the Wasatch show.
Yeah.
And that'll end the year for me.
That'll be it. Nice. Well, we're going to get a little update on you on the show season. I ran into you up at Bellevue, which was cool. We chatted there for a little bit, and then we're gonna talk about trout flies. Maybe get some tips and tricks out of you for tying those little beautiful little flies that you tie and all that. So, but yeah, maybe just take us back first. What have you been tying? I know you've got your flies. How do you describe to people who haven't seen what you do? What's your focus?
Well, my focus is for tying is dry flies, trout flies. And I tie things that are, interesting to me. I mean, as far as, what I tie to fish, here on the Bitterroot in Montana, in a couple of weeks, I'll be tying squallas, foam squallas like a maniac, and then salmon flies. But, I don't tie that kind of thing at shows. I tie things that are not as common, things that people, I mean, let's face it, you can catch every fish you want to catch in a mayfly hatch on a parachute Adams, but there's a lot of flies that, will catch the same fish, but are just not as common, the hackle stackers and the Wally Wings with the turkey, which makes it so much more durable than the original version. And so I like to tie, things that, people may have seen, or things that, require, like a little trick, in order to make them come out right. Like hackle stackers, the way Bob Quigley tied that fly originally, he used his thread to make the loop to wrap the hackle around. And I would tie them like that. And then when I would get done, I would end up putting a piece of, parapost on the fly after I was had finished tying, so that I could see it. And then one day it just dawned on me, why don't I use the parapost for the loop, wrap my hackle around that, and then when I finish the fly, I've got a built-in post.
Right.
And I can see the fly. I don't know if Bob Quigley would approve, but it sure made sense to me. So, and a lot of people haven't seen that before. So, little things like that that are, that fly tires, figure out just by tying, thousands of flies. So,
Right. Right. And is Bob Quigley, is he still around?
no, no, he passed away. I may not have this right, but I think it was around 2003.
Oh, yeah, a long time ago, quite a while
But
ago.
he,
Yeah.
yeah, he gave us the Quigley Cripple, the Hackle Stacker, and the Film Critic, which is kind of a combination. Really well engineered flies. I mean, when you really break them down and how to tie them, they're just so well engineered, and so much thought went into it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I really appreciate things like that.
Right. What is when you say well engineered, what does that mean for a dry fly, for a trout fly? How is that different than, say, some of these flies that maybe aren't as engineered as well?
Well, there's just so many parts and pieces, like he had two tails. He had a shut tail and then an adult tail, and then your body material. It's an emerger, so you don't really want a super buoyant body material, right? You want it to hang, and then the way he does the wing bud and the post, wrapping the hackle, the way he stacks the hackle. There's a lot going on up at the eye of that hook. And so I did a video on Tim Camisa's website.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, that was also before COVID, so it's been a while.
Sure.
We were going to get together and do a fly tying video, and then COVID happened, so we had to do it remotely. But I'm pretty sure it's still up on his channel. But it was a film critic video, and I got pretty deep in the woods on that one. So
That's awesome. Yeah. So you did a video with Tim. We'll find a link to that, and we'll get it in the show notes so people can take a look. That's good. Yeah, I see it right here. Looks like it's still out there going strong. Okay, cool. And so that's, yeah, Bob Quigley. We've got those patterns, and so and then you tie, and you described another one you mentioned with maybe talk about the wings. I think that's something you've done differently.
okay, well, so this is something I can't take credit for, but I have a really good friend in Utah. His name was Paul Shirtliff, or is Paul Shirtliff. Really good fly tire, and we both really liked the Wally Wings, but tied in their original version with the duck, it was a beautiful fly, but completely impractical. Like, one fish, that fly's toast. One cutthroat tooth, and that I mean, so it was a pretty fly that, wasn't really for fishing. And so talked about, another feather to use maybe. And he actually came up with the turkey flat. And he had tied a fly for I think it was the Wasatch show, and it was a parachute Wally wing, and it won fly of the Expo, and he got it on the pin the next year for the show. But it was genius, and it's turkey has got a much more substantial stem, so you got to deal with that. With the duck feather, you can just tie all of that stuff in and then cut it off. But with the turkey, you've got to remove that stem first. It's too big and thick to be able to, you got to get rid of it. So he figured all that out. And we sat and tied a bunch of them. And so, yeah, I continue to go to shows and tie it, but I can't take credit for the idea.
And what is the fly called?
It's just a Wally wing tied with a turkey feather instead of a duck.
Yeah. What is the Wally wing? What is that exactly?
Well, a Wally wing is it's I think that fly originated in, I want to say Norway or one of the Scandinavian countries. And it's a matched pair of wings, and basically you tie the feather in. You kind of it's kind of hard to describe, but you take your feather and you kind of Christmas tree it, and so that you've got a tip section, and then you've got the rest of the feather pulled down, and then when you tie it in, you take a barbule off of either side of the tip feather and strip it down the stem, and it forms two separate wings. And it's it's not a unknown fly. I don't see a lot of people at shows tying them. The problem with doing it with the duck was that it sometimes at the end of the fly, when you go to strip it, the duck wouldn't strip. Whereas with the turkey feathers, they always strip. So
Gotcha. So basically, at the shows, and you're like we mentioned, you're going to multiple shows. You typically describe that. What do you? How does that work for you? Let's just take it to the East Idaho show. When you go there, what can people expect? Do you kind of tie a couple of these per day, tie a bunch of different patterns, or what do you focus on?
well, it's just kind of the mood. You know, I tie a lot of flies actually. Well, I mean, at the shows, I'm tying, I bet you I'm tying at least 50 flies a day.
Oh wow.
Um, and I give them away, if sometimes people will come up and ask me to tie something, or they'll sit down, usually when people walk by, they'll start the conversation. I'll ask them if they're a fly tire, and then I'll ask them what kind of flies they tie. And sometimes people will sit down and say specifically, like, I'm having trouble. I'm just getting into this, and I'm trying to tie parachute Adams, and I'm having some troubles, and I'll tie one for them and kind of show them the little tricks, how to set the tail, how to finish, which is usually where people have problems is learning how to finish a parachute Adams. So I teach them the quick and dirty way. And so there's a lot of that. Sometimes people will sit and look at my display and ask me to tie a particular fly, or sometimes they'll just sit and watch and see what I'm doing. I but I'm just kind of doing my own thing. Another fly that I've been tying quite a bit at the shows this year is it's a Kelly Gallup fly. It's called the Found Link,
Oh
and
yeah, the found link. Yeah.
it's kind of a takeoff on Mercer's Missing Link. And it's kind of a strange fly. It floats really well, and it's kind of a caddis pattern with a tail. And I've thrown them for caddis, and I've thrown them for mayflies, and it's fast becoming like a confidence fly. It's like one of those flies. It's not only fun to tie at shows, but it's actually, it fishes really well. So
How is it different than the missing link? Because it looks a lot like the missing link, right?
it looks a lot like the Missing Link, but so the main difference is the Missing Link uses hackle. So at the wing, so you're basically kind of doing like an elk hair caddis head, and you're tying a hackle. So where you tie your hair down and you've got the back part for your wing and the front part for your head, you wrap a hackle around that base, kind of a parachute style. And the foundling doesn't have any hackle on it. But what is different is that it's got a long adult tail, and really long, and that's something that when I tie dry flies, I know we all know mayflies have three tails, but on a fly, you know, if you just put three strands of Coke de Leon or something like that, it looks great, but it doesn't hold the back end of the fly up. So on a fly, the tail is not as much anatomical as it is an outrigger. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So it actually, you can't, putting three strands of Coke de Leon in the back end of your flies down in the water. So you kind of got to put a substantial tail on these flies. It's my opinion. I'm sure other people disagree, but the Found Link has a long, really long adult tail, and then it's got like a kind of like a stimulator tail, and the body is deer hair, and it's flared right at the base of the adult tail. And but you do very loose wraps on the body so that you don't squeeze all that air out of those hair fibers, and that I think is what helps it float. And then it's got spinner wings, like spent mayfly wings coming off the sides, which is a whole different direction. And then it's got the caddis wing on top, and some, a dubbed thorax, And so it's just, a bunch of crazy stuff all put together, but it works. It's like one of those flies, you look at it and you think like, how did Kelly come up with this fly? And obviously the missing link gave him, the start, but he refined it and said, I like the spinner wings, I like the tail, I like, and boom, all of a sudden, if I tie the body loose, it'll float better than if I don't. And next thing you know, bingo, Jed's a millionaire, right? And
Wow. That's a good one.
yeah, so I like tying stuff like that. And but it's when I first started doing this, guys like me were king because we went to tons of shows. And now it's the kids that have 30,000 followers on Instagram.
Right. Well, I guess it
So
depends on who you're chatting with, right? But yeah, definitely. I think it's kind of cool because, I mean, do you see any of that out there? Do you look at that? I'm not even sure on Instagram. There's probably some people that are maybe new to it and tie in. But do you
well,
see, do you see some of that? Do you follow that?
Well, I do. Here's what I see is that, I got started doing this, I don't know, 2010, 11, somewhere around there. And, because I was at so many shows, people would, come up and ask me to, be an ambassador, be on their pro team. And then all of a sudden, it's like, now it's like the newer companies that are coming out, like Renomed's a good example. They're making these great scissors. They're Polish. The guys that are on the Renomed Pro team are the guys that have the huge Instagram followings. And guys like me, it's like, yeah,
Right.
whatever,
Right. So
whatever.
yeah, the social has not been a focus for you, increasing your following on.
I'm 66 years old.
Yeah.
That's not my.
Yeah. It's not your wheelhouse. Yeah. It is interesting because I mean I think that some people are really love it and are really good at the social media stuff, and there's a lot of people that are kind of like, well, yeah, I mean it'd be okay if it wasn't around. You know what I mean? Like there's
Well,
that.
I'm not against it. It's just that, I'm just not that concerned with how many people like me. Um,
Right. Right.
if you meet me, I think you'll like me, but now my Instagram has got as much woodworking and as it has fish porn on it. So,
Right.
just whatever I'm into.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's cool, I think cool for me and us to be able to, kind of tap into this because there's a lot of people that are in your age range that have a ton of knowledge, that, we were trying to share, right? And these things are,
Yes.
some of these flies like the Wally Wing, I mean, I bet there's a ton of people who haven't even heard of this thing, right? This style or whatever, or, some of these flies. But let's tell me a couple. So we've talked Wally Wing, we've talked Quigley's, we talked the Found Link. What are a few other ones that you might be tying, say, at coming up at the Albany and the East Idaho Expo? What are some other patterns sitting on? Because I know on your table you had the little wood with a few, like a
Yeah.
dozen flies sitting there.
So there's a couple of flies on my display that I don't bring the things to tie them. I had I used to tie some Davy McPhail stuff just because I thought it was cool. And I've got that stuff and people recognize it, but I don't necessarily tie those at shows. I do I tie some emergers, I tie, cripples, and I tie the film critic. And let's see, I've done there's a stimulator pattern that I was tying. It's basically a pheasant tail stimulator. And it's just such a great looking fly, and it fishes really well. And I apologize. I see
Yeah,
his
no
face,
worries.
but I'm losing his name. And what I hate to do, I'm not one of those guys that, like, if I change a couple of components, I don't rename the fly and act like
Right.
it's mine.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to give credit where credit is due. Even when I was doing a lot of YouTube videos for Norvise and Semperfly, I always, make sure that people understand that this is somebody else's, pattern. And I'm just tying it. And for the life of me, I can't remember his
No, no
name,
worries.
but it's a great fly.
So it's a stimulator. So your typical, a little bit of a different take on a stimulator.
It's a stimulator with a pheasant tail body. and it's got a light wire rib, and
Oh yeah.
it's just a great looking fly. And so it doesn't have the traditional, the hackle and stuff like that around the body, but it's just a real finished looking fly. And I take the time to make the front hackle around the head, like just try to make it look like a brush.
Okay.
And and also too, in fly tying it shows, when I'm going fishing, I'm not tying flies like that. Like I'm not stripping off half the hackle so I get that perfect brush.
Right.
It's quick and dirty and we're going fishing. So there's a big difference between show tying and what I'm actually tying to go fish.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When I'm tying at shows, I'm trying to do, I'm trying to be as perfect as I can. And sometimes it's just for demonstration and sometimes it's for teaching. It depends on who's in front of you.
Yeah, that's what's cool. I think what's cool about the shows is that they can go there and they can, sit. If for those that haven't been there, they can just stand or sit right in front of you and watch you tie flies. And the cool thing is they could even ask questions and maybe even get a
Sure.
fly tied, right? That I think that's the
But
power of the fly tying expos is that you've
yeah.
got that one-on-one connection with these great fly tyer, right? And some of them, I think at East Idaho and Albany, there's hundreds of fly tyers, right?
Well, there are. So that's the difference between like the corporate shows, like the Feremsky shows, like Bellevue and Denver, and the East Coast shows, Atlanta, Pleasanton. Those are great fly tying, fly fishing shows. But if you notice, I mean, how many tires were at Bellevue? 20?
Yeah, there's not as many. Yeah, there was like a dozen or 20. Yeah, right there on the.
Right. And so there's a reason for that. When I started doing those shows, I had to jury, I had to send some flies in. I had to be sponsored. I had to be a pro team tire, and then yeah, there's only 20 some tires, and then if you notice, the tables are very high, and there's no chairs across from you,
Right, right. Yeah, there's no
right?
chairs.
And so people, then that's maybe that's designed to keep people from just hanging out.
Oh, right,
And
right.
so how long can you stand and watch somebody tie?
Yeah,
And then at the club shows, the club shows are like the TU chapters, the FFI chapters. I was part of the Wasatch show I was the TU president for the High Country Fly Fishers in Park City, Utah, and the president of the Salt Lake chapter, Stonefly Society. Scott Antonetti and we ran the Wasatch show for 6 years, and so and those are club shows. We raffle and we do all kinds of things to raise money, and then at the end we count up our expenses, and hopefully we've made a little bit of money for conservation projects. Whereas the fly fishing show, the Feremsky shows, they've kind of made their money when the door opened. It's a business,
yeah,
and it's not
yeah. It's different.
they're not hoping, they know. And so at the club shows, generally we have a big, rectangle of tables with tires on the inside, and then you got four chairs across from you, and people sit, and sometimes people, they hang out for a long
Yeah, they do. Right.
time.
Yeah, sometimes they're hanging out. That's awesome,
Yeah, they just got nowhere else to be, right? And
which is cool.
yeah, it's a whole different vibe for sure. It's
Yeah.
definitely more relaxed, and it's kind of like being a barber. You sit down and people start telling you about their wives and their kids and their job,
Right.
and then
Right.
you find yourself tying flies and giving marital advice all day.
When you go to the, let's just take the, the East Idaho. Would you go there? How many of the people do you know that are coming up and sitting at the table? Is it like a more you don't know, or a lot of people?
Well, it's so I definitely, there's some that, I mean, I recognize a lot. But a lot of it is, I mean, even at this show in Bellevue, people come up and say, "Hey, I saw you in Denver 4 years ago. I saw you," and they follow me on Instagram, and how's the woodworking going? I look up at them, and it's like, but I can't, maybe it's just being 66 years old, but I can't really remember
Yeah.
all the people. But
Right.
there's something about them that's familiar. And then once they tell me a little bit, it's like, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
there's a guy at Bellevue that I'd met at the old Ellensburg show way before COVID. That show it's not in existence anymore. But he grew up in Lubbock, Texas, where I grew up.
Oh, wow.
And I hadn't seen him in forever. And he comes up, he goes, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I'm like, and then sure enough, he's also a fly tire and pretty avid fisherman. But so it's there's that great connection that's there. It's people that fly tires. I mean, if you're going to the trouble to go to a show, it's usually there's a little bit of out of pocket expense. I mean, I drive 8 hours to Seattle. I drive 10 hours to Albany. There's some effort, but you do it because you love it. And then you have an audience of people that really appreciate what you do. So it's just such a positive thing. And it'd be a shame to ever lose it. I mean, during COVID, I remember when the shows just fired back up. What was it, 2022 or three? Maybe 23. I mean, everybody was so glad to get back to see each other. I mean,
I
it's like,
know.
we all, I mean, because it's kind of, if you go to enough shows, you see the same people, kind of. I mean, it's like a traveling band of carnies, right?
Yeah, it is.
And so we actually missed each other, and
It is pretty
I mean,
cool.
I'll never tell Phil Rowley that I miss him, but I miss him.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I think the show circuit and season is cool, and it's good for everybody. Yeah, you guys connecting, then everybody who wants to learn, they're able to come out there, and for a pretty small price to get in. Especially for the Albany and the East Idaho expos, right? It's not too much to get in there to support, and you're supporting a good nonprofit too, right? That's the other thing that's cool.
Sure, and it's the connection. I mean, it'd be a shame if all fly tying went to YouTube.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that wouldn't be
mean,
good.
it's a great medium,
Yep.
but there's just something about
Yeah.
you know,
You need
uh,
both. You need both. It's kind of like it's like books. Books of
right,
with all the blogs and everything that's changed online. Books still aren't going away, and even magazines aren't going. It's just
right,
changing. Same with the show. Like, yeah, we're not going to be all YouTube videos without it. And be like robots out there, right? It would be
right, right.
so. But you mentioned the found link. I want to go back to that because I think that's interesting about the transition. You talked about how before you name it something else. In Kelly's example, he named it something very similar so everybody knows where it came from, but he did call it a different name. So like he changed something substantial. What do you have to change on a fly, do you think, to make it substantial enough to?
Well, that's a really good point, isn't it? I mean, it's like so I was talking to Tim Flagler about the purple haze, which is a fly that is credit is given to a guide here on the Bitterroot River here in Montana, where I live. And what did he do? He changed the color of the body.
Is that it? Yeah, that's it.
Well, it's a parachute Adams. I
Yeah, with
mean,
just the color, right?
there's another fly here called the brindle shoot that another tire here in the Bitterroot claims is his fly. It's a parachute Adams. It's got a tail, it's got a parachute, it's got a hackle, it's got a body, but and I don't know. For me, I'm just not that. I figure that anything you could come up with, somebody is probably already tied.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. It's kind of like rock and roll. There's probably nothing that's really original.
Yeah.
And I just don't have that, that I try to be a little humble about this. I'm just, I'm a copier. I see
We
somebody's
all are.
fly that
We
I
all are.
love
Yeah.
and I try to reproduce it to their stand. I don't like to take a fly and say, well, so and so tied this fly. I think it would be better if you did this, because I think that's a little disrespectful. If I'm tying it, I like to tie it the way it was tied, other than, the hackle stacker, which I actually changed a little bit to incorporate the post. But I do it with all respect, and I tell people that too. I say, I always show them this is the way Bob Quigley did this. And I just replaced it with this because at the end I'd like to be able to see this fly when I cast it, 50 feet downriver.
That's it. Who were some of those? You mentioned Bob and some other folks, Davey McVale. Are there a few others that have been out there that when you first started getting going, you were kind of learning from those tires?
Yeah, there were. I mean, Davey McPhail was like, I mean, he was like Jesus to me,
Right. What did Davey do that was, because the same for me, when I saw Davey the first time, I was like, whoa, what was he doing differently than others out there?
Well, I mean, it was a combination of stuff. I mean, the accent was great,
Yeah.
trying to understand him, tidy up the waist, it's going to fly,
Right.
but he's just such a clean tire. And it just, for some reason, it just made me want to tie that. But some of my early influences were, I mean, most everybody in the fly fishing world knows who Marty Howard is, and Marty is my neighbor.
Mm.
Actually, well, not now, but when I retired from veterinary medicine, I moved to Park City, Utah. Marty actually pulled me over one day. He was a motorcycle cop, which a lot of people
Oh,
don't
wow.
know, and he was kind of an too, but then when he stopped being a cop, he became a good guy.
Oh, no kidding.
No, I'm just kidding. He was
Yeah.
just he wasn't warm and fuzzy when he pulled me over that day.
Right.
But his son, he has a son named Trevor, and Trevor was a guide and worked at a fly shop in Park City, and he just young guy, and he would he'd have to pass my house to go home from work every day. He would stop and spend a couple hours tying with me. And really, like just getting the basics going, learning proportions and material handling and thread management and all the stuff that kind of goes into tying any fly. Trevor was instrumental. Marty was as well. And those guys were really big, influences on me. And then Curtis and Cheats. I met them before Fly Fish Food, really. They still had day jobs, and they were just great guys. They were so gracious and so giving of their time. We used to have this outdoor show in Heber, and I forget what it's called. It was an outdoor fly fishing show. It was a little show. It went on for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And I'm sitting at a table with Cheech, and I have no idea who he is. And I'm eyeing his stonefly, the Masked Marauder.
Oh, really?
And I'm tying that fly, and everybody's like watching, and I'm saying, "Yeah, this guy, I saw him on YouTube. His name's Cheech, and it's really cool because he pulls the fin skin over the beard, over the bead, and he's sitting there next to me, listening to me all day.
That's hilarious. He
And
didn't
then
tell you,
he,
didn't even mention it.
and then he introduced, but he wasn't a big deal back then,
Right.
right? I mean, they were not big, in humble beginnings, and what they've grown into and what they've done is amazing, and it's been a pleasure to watch. But I just appreciate. I mean, Curtis used to help me a ton with my videoing, and when I was doing some YouTube videos, and just always so willing to give me a hand, and Cheech also, I mean, just great guys. But I learned a lot from both of them. And most people, they think of Cheech as the fly tire. Curtis is a great fly tire.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the brains of the
Yep.
operation,
That's
and
right.
Cheech is the personality. But Curtis is an exceptional fly tire.
Yeah.
And both of them. I mean, it's just
That's
and
cool.
guys, and the bottom line is guys like that are great
Yeah.
for this industry, for the art of fly tying, for the whole thing. There's a whole generation of young fly fishermen that they are like the old guys, Jack Dennis's and Randall Kaufman's and Gary LaFontaine and Mike Lawson's. Those were the guys that I looked at, and now there's a whole generation of people that know Cheech and Curtis,
That's right. Yeah, Cheech
and
and Curtis. Yeah.
and they're keeping the ball rolling. And I can't say enough nice things about those guys.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, those are, you mentioned all guys that we've had on the podcast, and it's been great. And we just had Davey McPhail on the podcast too, and it was I found myself re-listening to that podcast episode because of his accent and tried to imitate him. You know what I mean? It's pretty
Hey
funny.
up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can't. I'm still no good at it, but good. So that's your influences, and maybe take us back into we were talking flies. So we got a bunch of cool patterns. If we made a list of the things you've talked about, it's pretty awesome. And the cool thing is, again, people can go to the show, they can hit you up there. But what about like on tying tips? If we're talking dry flies, what do you think? What are the key things people skills people should have when they're tying, or maybe what are your biggest tips say on tying dries? Like 'cause that's
Well,
a struggle for me for sure.
yeah, so there's some materials that we have today. I'll give Semperfly a little plug here. Their 18-aught nano silk is such a game changer for dry flies because you really never have to worry about creating bulk. Right. Like, if you watch like old dry fly videos, they talk about, start your thread here, and be economical in your wraps. And it's all about not creating bulk. Well, when you're tying with 18-aught nano silk, you can't create bulk. I mean, it's just so, and you keep it nice and flat. You have to learn if you're doing deer hair, you have to keep your nano silk flat because if you don't, it'll scissor that hair right off in your
Oh
lap.
wow. Yeah.
And so there's a little trick.
Yeah, there's a trick right there. Wow.
And they have the K-pop dubbing, which I think I've probably tried every dry fly dubbing that I've ever seen, and I've never found one that I like as much. Sometimes it clumps a little bit, things like that, but not always. And it just goes on so tight, it floats so well, and so for dry fly tying, the materials that you use are important. Learning, your proportions, keeping your eye clean. Like some of the flies we talked about. I mean, the front of the fly gets pretty busy, a lot going on up there. So you got to keep that in mind.
Do you have a little tip on that on the eye clean? Do you have a certain distance you like to kind of stop without any wraps or material?
Well, I learn it by doing. I
Yeah,
mean,
just to see.
you
Yeah.
you tie it, and all of a sudden you come to the end, and you're out of space, and you can't. Your whip finishes are now occluding your eye, and so you figure it out. Yeah, you just got to do it again. And I mean, the one thing is, with any fly you tie, your 10th one is going to look a lot better than your first one, right? And you just kind of figure some stuff out each time you go. So the key is just to get in there and start doing it, and and learn from your mistakes. And it's very much muscle memory. I mean, for me, if I haven't been on the vise for 6 months, as soon as I sit down and put my first wrap of thread on my first hook, it's like I was tying yesterday.
No kidding. Yeah, you don't lose
Yeah.
anything.
No, I don't. It's just like riding a bike.
That's cool. Do you find have the eyes? What is that been something that's changed? I mean, no, for me the glasses and stuff has made a little bit. It's changed changed things a little bit.
Yeah, it has. I usually, so I've got some fly tying glasses now that they're progressives. So I'd sit down with my magnifiers on, and then somebody would sit across from me and they were blurry. And so I've got these glasses now. They're Ray-Bans, but they're 300s in the bottom, and they progress up to 200 at the top. So not only can I see what I'm tying, but I can see who I'm talking to. But yeah, I tie a lot. I have a dear friend from Park City. He's an old Norvise guy. He's been tying on a Norvise forever. And his name's John Schultz, and I think he's 14 years older than me, or 12 years older than me. He still doesn't wear glasses.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And
What's his secret?
I think that it's because he ties a lot of big Stillwater patterns, but still, it's like,
That's pretty good.
I think he's just showing off, really.
Right.
He probably has secret contacts, and he's
Yeah, he
not
probably
telling us.
does. He probably does. Wow. And then the Norvise you mentioned a little bit. And you still tie on the Norvise?
I do. I started tying on the Norvise when Norm was still around, and what a prince of a guy he was. He was so grateful and thankful. I mean, every show he couldn't thank you enough for coming and tying on his vise and, being an ambassador. And he was, I mean, you'd call him on Sunday and, he'd pick up the phone on the second ring and you'd talk an hour about fishing first. And then it was like, no, now what do you need? And he always would send me things that he wanted me to have. I remember when his midge jaws came out, he's like, "Have you seen my midge jaws?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have." He says, "Have you tried them?" I said, "No, I'm still tying on the straight jaws and they're fine." So then I ordered whatever I was ordering. And when my order showed up, guess what was in there? A pair of midge jaws.
Yep. Right.
He wanted me to have them. And that's the kind of guy he was. And so for all the old Norvise guys out there, that was they were attracted to the vise, they were attracted to Norm. And I never have tied like Norm. I'm not a spinner. I tie on the Norvise like I would tie on a Renzetti. And he used to say, you could you could do some spin. I'm like, Norm, I'm teaching people that your vise is so versatile that you can even tie on it like a Regal.
Exactly. It's just, yeah, it doesn't have to be the spin vise.
And he thought that was funny, but
Yeah.
just
What is the on the spin? I guess I don't think of that too much to either, but I guess there are guys that tie and they spin and they're faster tied.
yeah, if you watch the Norm videos on YouTube, I mean, he's spinning dubbing on, he's spinning, 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 and he ties flies like in seconds, and it's just not how I tie. I like his vise, and but I tie on it like a regular vise. I love his bobbins. I mean, I'm at a point where I cannot tie no matter what vise I tie on. I'm using those bobbins.
Yeah, because the bobbins basically they got some mechanical thing where they
Yeah,
actually they
yeah.
keep up the thread. They don't let it. You don't have to roll it up.
Yeah. They have a spring retractor in there, and people say, "Well, I don't like them because if when I let go, all the thread winds up on me." And it's like, yeah, don't let go. I mean,
Right. Just hang on to it.
yeah, that'll happen to you a couple times, and you'll stop doing that.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
like crowding ahead, right?
That's
Just
cool.
you know.
Is there anybody at the shows that are tying on Norvices that are doing a lot of the spinning?
uh, I don't see a lot of people. I mean, the guys that, when Norvise is at the shows, it has a new owner now, and he'll have people at the booth and
Right.
they'll be tying that way. They don't, nobody does it quite like Norm did,
Right.
but John Schultz, he ties at a lot of he'll be at East Idaho and Salt Lake, and he was at the Boise show. We sat next to each other, and he does some of that stuff. And he's pretty much mainly he's like a Stillwater Yoda, kick boat and, sinking lines. The guy is just a machine out there, but
Nice.
but
Yeah.
that's what he ties. He ties Stillwater patterns, and they're all mostly his. Some of the Bill Sheese, the Henry's Lake guy, who ties some of his stuff, but yeah, he does a lot of that. But there's a lot of guys that Ken Burkholder, people that go back years, I mean decades on Norbice, and they don't have 30,000 followers on Instagram, and they've it's kind of sad because they don't the company has gone in a different direction, it seems, and is more geared towards the younger guys with all the followers, and
Right.
instead of remembering the guys that got them there, right? Because you're sitting at a show and you're an ambassador. People ask you about your vise, they ask you about the materials, the hooks you use, the all this stuff, and you sit there and you tell them what you love about it, and you're not knocking anything else. You're just, I love this stuff. That's why I'm tying with this stuff. I could tie on any vise and use any material I want. This is what I choose, and this is why. And so you get some of these guys that have been tying for 50 years, and they got a lot to offer.
Definitely. No, that's great. Well, you mentioned the a few materials, the nano silk, the K-Pock dubbing. Are there a few others you'd throw on there that might maybe if we're focusing on dry flies that
Well,
are your go-tos?
Yeah, for dry flies, I use I mean I'm pretty much a hair and feather guy. And so I tie with a lot of the saddle hackles, the longer hackles that are more consistent all the way through. I'm a huge whiting guy. I love to get my deer hair from Blue Ribbon Fly Shop in West Yellowstone, from Cam. I mean, he's got some of the best deer hair on the
Oh,
planet.
nice. Okay.
But I'm not a big synthetic, brightly colored guy. I tie with a lot of fur and a lot of feather, biots, dry fly dubbing, nano silk, and I like doing my posts out of calf body hair rather than parapost. But finding good long calf body hair is a challenge. There was at the Albany show a couple of years ago. There was a girl that showed up that I think her father was a commercial tire in Oregon, and he had passed away. And she brought boxes of materials, and they were like $1 a pack. I mean, and like old stuff. But it was like she had like a box of calf body hair, little packets for $1, and it was beautiful. It was like a little gold mine, and she was very popular at that show.
Right. Right. That's cool. That's awesome, man. So, I remember too, Davey McVeigh mentioning, I think he does tie with some synthetics. I think he mentioned that he likes to mix, kind of synthetics with naturals. Do you remember seeing some of those videos that he did or talking about that?
Yeah, he did, and I believe I may be mistaken about this, but I believe he also is a Semperfly guy.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right.
Semperfly is based out of London, so
Oh, right.
they have we do the fly jams on Zoom, and there'll be 80 tires on there, and half of them are in Europe, and you got all the Scottish guys and the German guys and the and you can't understand a word they're saying.
Yeah, it's awesome. Nice. All right, so we're gonna take it out here pretty quick, Dave. But we're gonna do our this is a mouthful, our Teton Territory trout trivia question of the episode here. And so the way this is gonna work is I'm gonna ask a question, and you don't have to answer this. I think you're probably gonna know the answer, but the listeners can answer, and all they have to do is go on to the post that we put on Instagram and mention Yellowstone Teton Territory and Wet Fly Swing, and actually and give us a shout out. It'd be at West Texas Bugs as well. So if they mention that and then answer the question, and then we're going to give away a little selection of flies of some of these dry flies we've been talking about here. So does that sound like a good plan here, Dave?
Certainly.
Okay, so here's the question. And so if you know the question, again, I'll go over there when this goes live on Instagram, and I'm going to choose whoever gets the right answer at random. So we're going to just pick one winner. The question is, which classic dry fly pattern was created on the Henry's Fork and remains a staple for selective trout in the Yellowstone Teton region? I think you mentioned it in this episode, but there's one fly that was created there. It's a classic pattern. And let me just give three options: the Adams, the Royal Wolf, the Quigley Cripple, or the elk hair caddis. And those are all great patterns. And so that's the Teton Territory trout trivia for the day. As we get into this, as we get into our final segment here, Dave, we mentioned a few patterns there. What did we miss today? What do you think are some of your dry fly? If you had to go to dry fly anywhere, whether it's Utah or the Montana, the West, what are a few of those patterns? Have we not mentioned any that you would have in your box?
Well, that found link has become like my latest confidence fly, and I fished it on a bunch of different rivers, and it's a confidence fly because it gets eaten. Out here in Montana, everybody's got a purple haze in their box. And it's funny, like on the Green River in Utah up at Dutch John, they've got a fly out there. They call it a triple double. And it's basically the guy tied it using it was like an old couch material from the 50s, like Herculon or something like that. And he would dub. So basically, it's an ant, right? It's got a ring of hackle, a dubbing ball, a ring of hackle, a dubbing ball, and a ring of hackle. So they call it a triple double. and it imitates an ant. They throw that fly for every hatch, right? It's like Yellow Sallies are out, throw a triple double.
No
EMDs
kidding.
are out, throw a triple double, right?
Yep.
Those guides up there, they just know that fly is catching fish.
Oh, wow.
Here in Montana for mayflies, we have this fly called a brindle shoot. It's basically it's got a moose tail, calf post, hackle, grizzly hackle, and then it's got this dubbing blend. It's kind of a goldish, greenish. It's about four different, it's like this top secret mixture of the dubbing, and they throw that for every mayfly hatch out here.
No kidding.
And it works, right? It doesn't matter. It's just you tie them small, you tie them big.
Yeah. And it's a parachute, right? It's a parachute.
It's a parachute, and they throw it for every hatch, and it works.
Like the chubby Chinova, we've heard a lot about that one too, right? The chubby is like thrown everywhere. Yeah. What about the stimulator? Are you still? Sounds like you're still a big stimulator because that's a Kaufman, right? Randall Kaufman pattern.
Yeah. That is what I was always taught, was that it was a Randall Kaufman pattern. I know there's another guy that insists that he
is there?
them. Yeah,
Okay.
but I won't get into that.
No.
Randall Kaufman, and yeah. So the stimmy is a great pattern for throwing for, like here on the Bitterroot, we have a squala hatch that's going to take off, with the winter we've had. It may be going now for all I know, but stimmies can imitate squalas. They can imitate salmon flies. You tie them big enough. It's a great fly. It floats great. And it's a great dry dropper fly because it'll hold up any tungsten bead. And I think it's just one of those flies that, does it look exactly like anything? What does a royal wolf look like that hatches on the water? Not a thing.
No.
But, it's a very functional fly. You can see it, it floats, it's a great dropper fly, for putting a dropper underneath it. And so, yeah, there are certain flies that, if you're just getting into tying, a Parachute Adams will cover all of your mayflies, tied in a size 18 for a blue wing or a size 10 for a green drake and everything in between. So if you could get that in your arsenal, a stemmy in your arsenal, in some sort of caddis pattern.
Caddis, like the missing link or the found link.
Or just an elk hair caddis.
Or an elk hair. What is the difference on the elk hair? The elk hair versus, because the elk hair, the missing link, the found link, they look similar. They've got that elk hair wing or deer hair wing.
Well, that's about it though. So, so an elk hair caddis doesn't have a tail. It's got a dubbed body with hackle, sort of like the stimulator body.
Right.
And then it's got an elk hair wing on it. And
that's it.
With a nice little head. Kelly Gallup cuts it first and puts it down. The traditional way was to tie in your hair and then trim it. Right. But I like Kelly's method.
Do you do it Kelly's way?
Yeah, I think it makes total sense to me, and it makes a nice little perfect head. And it's just so much easier, and it's a lot less mess, right?
It is. How do you get the right amount of? You talk about proportions. The elk hair on that wing. How do you know how much to put on, depending on? Because I think you could overdress that pretty easily, right?
Certainly, you can. So you measure. I put my clump after I've stacked my hair. I put it in my right hand and I measure it. I want the tips to just come to right at the bend of the hook. And then I go ahead and cut them like Kelly did, cut my butt ends off, and then I just place it. And I do another little trick on hair wings. So instead of just putting my clump of hair on the hook and then doing a pinch wrap or doing any kind of wrap, what I do is I wrap my thread around my clump up in the air above my hook. So I've already bundled it above the hook, and then I pull that down. And then when I tie it onto my hook, it doesn't wrap
flare
around to the other side.
Oh,
well, no, it doesn't wrap. It doesn't roll to the other side.
Yeah.
So I've collected it or captured it in a clump before it even goes down onto the hook.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm not the only one that does
Yeah.
that. I mean, I obviously saw somebody do
Yeah. So in the air, you wrap a few wraps of thread around it so it can secure it a
at,
little bit. And then,
at least one. And then so it comes down onto the top of your hook shank already gathered together.
yeah,
And so then when you do your next wrap, it doesn't have that tendency to roll, your hair roll around to the other side of the hook, which
right.
the pinch wrap also is designed to do that as well. But I just find it easier to go ahead and do a couple of collecting wraps, up in the air, and then pull that down straight onto my hook and then do my next wrap. And my hair stays put right on top of my hook
It
shank.
does. What's your glue of choice? Do you use a lot of glue or any of that stuff
Uh,
or UV?
I do. I use a lot of Zappa Gap. I
Yeah,
use a lot
Zappa.
of Crazy Glue from Michael's Hobby Shop. I mean, I like a brush. I also finish my parachutes with glue, and I learned that from Cheech.
Oh, really?
Um,
Where's
you
that? You
know,
hit on the post, or where do you use the glue?
I just put a little bit on my thread.
Oh, yeah.
So I tie my when I've done my hackle wraps down to my body. Then I pull the end of the hackle down and take my thread and go right around the base of that post and tie my hackle off, cut the waste away, and then I put just a little bit of glue right, the first maybe half inch of my thread. And then I just do 3 or 4 more wraps, cut it, and it's done. And I've never had one fall apart.
That's
And
awesome.
I'll give that 100% to Cheech. He was the first person I ever saw do that.
There you go.
And I'd seen people like Charlie Craven and people that would put a drop of glue on the thread and let it travel down into the post and kind of saturate the whole thing. And that works well. I mean, you can get a little glue on your hackles and and kind of glue them together. And I just find it easier to do it by putting just, brushing a little bit of glue, and I mean a little bit, onto my thread and then doing a few wraps and it just seals it.
Perfect. Wow, those are awesome. Before we get out of here, I wanted to hear. I know Hal, we've talked to on the podcast here. I know he was at the Albany show. I think he moved to Idaho, right? And he's doing. I think that's part of the more of the success. I think Idaho's always been great, and I think this might be the 30-year anniversary. But do you connect with Hal over there? Has he been part of the success on
Yeah,
that show?
no, Hal and I are big buddies.
Oh, you are. Oh, cool.
Yeah, we were big buddies at Albany, and
Yep.
yeah, I always call Hal up and give him a hard time about where he's sitting me,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know that nothing. Guys that put together all these fly tires, they love nothing more than to have guys call them up and ask them to rearrange the schedule for them.
Right.
So I like to be that guy,
That's awesome.
also, but yeah, he's moved down to Idaho and he's putting together the tires. He came in there at a really good time. Bruce Staples had done it forever. And Bruce is kind of, he's on his way, he's on his way to retirement, and Hal stepped in, and it was, and now that show was at a ballroom at the Shiloh Hotel, and it had like 120 tires and about 10 vendors around the edge, and it was just, I mean, we were crammed in there like sardines, and it was just buzzing with energy. And I always wondered, like, how do they make money here with 10 vendors, right? But they had tons of raffles going. I used to win a rod at that show every year, which was kind of cool. I had like a 7-year streak where I won a rod.
No kidding.
But now that they're in the Expo, the Mountain Home or Mountain America Expo Center in Idaho Falls, and they put us out there on the hockey rink. They put a bunch of plywood down over the ice, and so now they've got a bunch of vendors, and it's turned into a very big show. It's still 100 I don't know, 125 tires or whatever, but now there's a lot of room, a lot of vendors now, which is great. And everybody complains about their feet getting cold, but
Oh, really?
we're sitting on ice, so
There you go. There you go. That's pretty awesome. Nice. Well, we're excited to follow. Hopefully, I'll see you there, and I might also see you in Albany. I think, this is going to be a fun show. Give me, before we head out here, just on the woodworking, give us, for those that don't know, what's your focus on the woodworking? What are you doing there?
Well, so I grew up in West Texas. I've always loved woodworking, like fine woodworking, but I've never really done it at a big level. When I moved to Montana 6 years ago, I had this shop, and it was going to be, I have some classic cars that was going to park cars in here. And I thought, you know what? Let me give this furniture. I'm retired. I don't do this to make a living. I just gotta, old retired guys gotta have something to get them out of bed in the morning. So I filled this shop with commercial tools and dust collection, and I've got a flat screen and surround sound and a wood stove,
Wow.
I started, I don't advertise at all. And my first job, there was a guy building a real custom barnwood house, and it was during COVID 6 years ago. And he was waiting 6 months on his front door. And so he asked me, "Hey, can you build me a front door?" And so his contractor came over because he'd never heard of me. 2 weeks later, he had a front door, and the contractor's like, "Where have you been all my life?" And so he throws a ton of work at me. So
Oh, wow.
I build, dining tables, coffee tables, beds, exterior doors, interior doors, sink cabinets, custom built-ins, all kinds of
Right.
stuff. And I work
Wow.
7 days a week. I come out here in the shop and put on some music, light a cigar, and start making sawdust,
There.
and then
Nice.
just word of mouth, and I'm as busy as I could be.
That's so cool.
And So it's kind of, I've kind of changed directions in life a little bit. Yeah, but it's retirement is about chasing your passions.
Yep.
And
Yep.
when I worked in South Florida, in veterinary surgery and neurology for 30 years in a big referral hospital, and with 160 people. And I was on call all the time, and residents and interns, and just working my butt off. And I used to think, if when I get all the time and all the money I need, what would I do? And I retired and moved to Park City, and I think I fished 160 days the first year and skied 90. And then before you knew it, I was president of the TU chapter. Before you knew it, I was tying
There you
flies at
go.
shows. Before you knew it, I had 28 fly rods, and I'm going to Alaska. And it's just like it just took off.
Yeah.
And So now it's the woodworking, but I still, my thing now is I found this place in Canada. Met this guy at the Denver show, and I drive to Edmonton, and they pick us up on a little twin engine and fly us all the way up to the top of Saskatchewan, and then take us into this little lodge on a otter.
Oh, wow.
And it's nothing fancy, 5 cabins. It's on a lake with the river coming in and out, and really, great Canadian kid guides, just hard working. And the food's decent, the cabins are decent, and the pike are off the chain.
Lots of pike, lots of big pike.
Like you've got a legitimate shot at a 50 incher.
Oh,
And
wow.
we use titanium leaders and 10 weights and 40-pound fluorocarbon. And
What's your fly? What's your pike fly? Are you tying your flies for it?
well, I do tie a bunch of pike flies, but there's an old guide up there, not old, but a very experienced senior guide, and he's got a fly that no matter what I tie, his fly still,
It works better.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so
God, that's great. That's great.
Tim Flagler was tying them at
Oh,
Bellevue,
Tim
and
was. That's so
yeah,
cool.
Tim and Mark Melnick went up there and did a new Fly Fisher
Oh, yeah.
episode on this place. I hate to say the place because I don't want it to get overrun. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll mention one. We're heading up to Scott Lake for the first time,
Yeah,
which is probably near in the same area, maybe. But
it's very
yeah,
close,
very close. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I love it. I go up there twice a year, every
Yeah.
year, and I
Wow.
take people with me, and gotten into the double-handed
Oh,
overhead.
you do? Yeah, you got the double hand. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're not spey rods.
No,
They're double head over. They're musky
musky
rods,
rods. Yeah.
and you can chunk a pike fly 90 feet with those things,
Right.
like effortlessly.
Yeah.
And if you double haul a 10 weight all day, it's not effortlessly.
No. No, it's not. No, that's cool. Well, I think we've got lots to follow up with you on. I think the next step is to connect with you at the show. So whoever can, we mentioned Albany is coming up. We got the East Idaho Expo, and you
And
mentioned,
then Salt
and then
Lake.
Salt Lake also. So we got those coming up still. And then the cool thing is that next year there'll be another round of shows, and hopefully you'll be back there. We'll see how that's all. Are you, as you look ahead, are you planning on sticking with the shows? I know you're
Yeah, I
yeah.
am. I think it's a part of my life I don't want to lose. So I start in Boise, Denver, Bellevue, Albany, and that's kind of my thing. I got invited to the symposium in
Oh yeah.
Somerset, New
Uh-huh.
Jersey, in November, and I was all set to go. I talked to Chuck a couple
Sure.
times on the phone, and then we had the government shutdown, and
Oh.
the air traffic controllers were off work, and
Oh
I get an
wow.
email from Delta the day before my flight was canceled, and I scrambled to rebook, and I couldn't get there before Saturday afternoon. So if he invites me to come back out there this coming November, I definitely will be there.
Yeah, you'll be there.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends out in that part of the country that I'd like to meet and or not meet, but hook up with. And that's just a fly tire show. It's not a fly fishing show; it's a fly tying show.
Yeah, it's flight tying
And
show.
yeah, it's the International Fly Tying Symposium. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we've heard about that one too. Good.
yep.
All right, Dave. Well, I think we can leave it there. We'll send everybody out to at West Texas Bugs. They can follow you on Instagram and keep up with you. And also, like we said, we'll meet up with you at the shows. And yeah, thanks for all your time today. This has been really great to connect finally. And we'll look forward to keeping in touch with you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, hope you enjoyed that episode of the Travel Podcast. If you want to connect with Dave, please do that. That's West Texas Bugs. And even better, after you do that, head over to the East Idaho Fly Tying Expo, and you can see him tie in person. You can pick his brains in person. And if you get a chance, this is one of the best fly tying expos in the country. And I would love to connect with you there. We're likely going to be there and hanging out with Dave and everybody else, so check in there. I want to let you know that there's a couple ways you can connect with me, Dave at wetflyswing.com, or the boot camp just launched as we're speaking. If you go to flyfishingbootcamp.com, you can check in and get all the replays, watch upcoming presentations. This is a multi-day speaker session where we got some of the best coming on to talk about all aspects of fly fishing. The Fly Fishing Boot Camp, you can go right now, flyfishingbootcamp.com. All right, we're going to get out of here. Hope you have a great day. And I want to say thank you for tuning in and hope you can explore a few more waters and experience that road less traveled.